Hello, hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday and welcome back to the stream. We have a spectacular conversation to be had today, and I promised you guys at the top of the week we were going to have an extra special lineup of guests this week, and today I bring that promise to fruition. I am super, super excited to have you guys meet the one, the only, the beautiful, the inspirational Riley Gaines here in just a few minutes, joining us on the stream to talk about women's sports, the future of women's sports with trans women, aka biological men, taking up a lot of the space in the sports world for women today, what that's going to look like at the collegiate level moving forward, what different states are doing to help accommodate for the actual protection of women, the Wyoming Kappa Kappa Gamma lawsuit that we've talked about a ton on the stream, but I love her take on it and how it applies to other women's rights and law at large and more. She is a freaking rock star, and it's been a long time coming to have her on the stream, so we'll have her jump on in just a few minutes. As you guys can imagine, Riley is an unbelievably busy human being, so we actually pre-recorded our conversation together earlier today. She had like a 30-minute window that we could make happen in between her fight to be Supergirl and fight to support women in so many different ways. So we're going to have her portion a little bit pre-recorded today for about 30 minutes on the stream, and then we're going to jump into my analysis live and everything going on in the world of women's sports going into 2024 after that, which I hope you guys can understand. Lots of other crazy things happening in the news today as well. I don't know if you guys are paying attention to just like the news at large or other content on the internet today, but it seems aliens have been around for like 1,000 years in Peru. Was it Peru that they found them? And the Mexican government showed them today. If you guys saw the picture, it literally looks like a child's claymation version of E.T. It looks so bad. Like, it can't possibly be real, in my opinion. But that's been in the news today. New York Fashion Week is among us, and last night were the Video Music Awards, the VMAs, and I'm just convinced now more than ever that fashion is dead. Like, the entire concept of the fashion industry has long been deceased, at least in the United States of America, because the things that I have seen on people's bodies from both Fashion Week and the VMAs on social media in the last few days, I can't. We're going to talk about beauty and why objective beauty and art still matters in culture today in 2023 and why it's something we should be continuing to fight for later on in the week. So we'll have a whole stream about that, from architecture to fashion to art and everything in between. But I know that's been a subject a lot of people are starting to pay attention to, and I think has now become more important than ever in our fight for objective truth, right? With beauty and art being such a forefront of the human experience and culture, it's up to us to continue speaking the truth in everything that we discuss, not just the hot button political issues where people tend to disagree, but even art and culture and the things that you wouldn't necessarily expect are so polarizing. So we'll cover that later in the week, but wanted to know if you guys saw the alien and all of the horrendous fashion choices happening on runways and red carpets across America today. I want to say hi to all of you guys. So if you haven't already dropped your name and where you're watching from over in our live chat, it's super fun for us to get to know you, and you guys get to know each other as well. That's what the live portion of a live stream is all about. So we'll start over on YouTube today. Alexandra Queen, always first up in our YouTube chat, watching from Montana today. That's awesome. One of my favorite states. G-Fact and Kobe are here. Kobe says, Madam Isabel, how are ya? How the heck are ya? I'm doing freaking great today, Kobe. I'm gonna be honest. I got up, I went to the gym, I lifted, I did core for like the first time in a long time, so my abs kind of hurt, I'm not gonna lie, but I'm doing all the right things today. I had like 8 meetings today and recorded a bunch of videos and got them all edited, and I'm still ahead of schedule. So life is good on this beautiful Wednesday, and thank you for asking, Kobe. Marky and Daloon are watching. We've got Michael here and Total Package. Mariana and HWD are watching. HWD from Australia and Mariana from Portugal. So very cool. I've always wanted to go to both of your beautiful countries. Over on Rumble, John's watching in Utah. Glock Fanboy and Rumble Rick are here in the chat. Love seeing our Rumble gang continue to grow, and thank you guys so much for all of the work that you are putting in to help get this stream picked up in the algorithm. Over on Getter, we've got Nitty Witty, Never Married, and more watching. And of course on Locals, where all of you guys need to join us after the stream. I'm going to tell you this now. You need to be on Locals for a million different reasons, including soon to be in-person meetups, extra content, and more. But happy to see all of our Locals gang out in full force. African Warlord, Alex Padron, Mrock, AJ, Magic Def, Mountain Lover, Becca, and more. You guys are the goats. And I'm so glad all of you are here. As we're kicking things off for the stream today, do me a huge favor and hit the like button so that this gets picked up to be shown to other people. Depending on where you're watching, we're on YouTube, Facebook, Rumble, Getter, and Locals. The like button might look like a thumbs up or it might look like a little heart. Ring the notification bell so that you always know when we are going live or uploading new videos to the channel. And most importantly, you guys know the drill. Smash that follow or subscribe button wherever you are watching. It is free to watch these streams. It will always be free to watch these streams, but as an independent content creator with an extremely limited budget streaming out of the spare bedroom of her apartment, the only way for us to grow is when you guys continue sharing the stream with others and you hit that follow or subscribe button. Let's say thank you very quickly to our sponsor of today's stream, the incredible Nori. I'm super excited to be working with Nori this fall, delivering the highest quality and most accessible microbiome solutions on the market. I've been on this whole journey to detox my life in the last several months that I've shared a lot with you guys on social media, and a huge part of that has been about what is happening inside my body and especially my health in the gut microbiome. If you guys don't already know, the gut microbiome is the key and the window into all the rest of your health in your body. Taking Nori products means that I'm taking vitamins and supplements with no additives, with ingredients that are backed by science and that are safely made here in the USA. I love their women's prebiotic and probiotic, but I also am literally obsessed with their Stay Well product, which I've talked to you guys a lot about and posted on Instagram the other day. It's kind of like little emergency packets that are designed to help both your gut health as well as your immune system and boost your immune functions, but they taste so much better and are so much cleaner ingredients than emergency packets. I drink one every single day. I just finished drinking mine for the day a few minutes ago and could not recommend, especially if you guys travel a lot, if you're constantly on the go and you're worried about getting sick quite often. Stay Well from Nori will absolutely help keep you healthy. You can grab your first Nori product from the link that I'm dropping right now in the chat, and I'm pretty sure my code over there is Isabel10, but I could be wrong. I'm forgetting, so I'll make sure to double check as we're going throughout the stream today and remind you guys at the end of the stream. So we have a lot to talk about today as it pertains to women's empowerment. And I talk a lot about women's issues on social media, shockingly, because I am a woman. Believe it or not, I know we can't define these things, objectively speaking, backed by science anymore, but I'm pleased to share with you that confirming what you probably thought my gender was when you so rudely assumed when you clicked on this link, I am in fact a woman. And so I have a deep sense of care and empathy for fellow women when our society is not just diminishing the value of what being a woman is, which we see all the time, every single day, but even more importantly, our society is objectively trying to erase women. We are trying to decimate womanhood and essentially remove it from society by any means necessary in every way, shape, or form that we can. And I'm noticing this in certain aspects of culture and society more than others. We obviously see this in the parenting and the motherhood world, where we don't call women women anymore. We call them birthing people, or people who menstruate, or even people with a bonus hole, which is absolutely disgusting, who chest feed. These are all terms being used in clinical medical settings, which makes me feel so great about my pre-med degree. And I pray that my sister, currently in medical school, actually learns objective truth and reality. So far, it's going so well for her, but you never know when things could possibly take a turn. And we've seen the idea of women being replaced as mothers, as caregivers, as parents in so many different ways in the last few months. We've talked a lot about them on the stream. One scientist in Germany, for example, suggesting that women don't gestate babies anymore, that we would grow babies in birthing pods in an artificial womb facility so that we can edit the baby's gene sequences to eliminate unwanted things like spina bifida or heart defects or other problems in utero, but it's not even in utero. It's in a fake womb called ectolife, if you've never heard of that. Super dystopian stuff. We unpacked a few weeks ago on the stream, a biotech startup company in San Francisco called Conception that is actually saying we don't need women's eggs to grow babies anymore. We can create new egg cells entirely from stem cells. So goodbye, women. You're deleted. We don't need you from society. Bye-bye. See you never. One scientist who is a raging feminist, so-called feminist. She says that she's a feminist. I don't think she actually is a feminist. Says that we should allow trans women, aka biological men, to gestate and birth babies by potentially implanting embryos in the livers of men, because the baby could theoretically grow in liver tissue and then deliver via C-section. So we wouldn't even need women to carry the babies anymore, even if we were carrying them in human bodies. And most recently, we saw an organization start bragging and going super viral all over the internet that they've actually grown a human-like embryo, an almost human adjacent embryo, entirely from stem cells. No eggs, no sperm, no placenta, no womb, no nothing, all in a laboratory, essentially in a petri dish and other scientific medical equipment devices, to make sure that this almost human-like, which probably tells me it doesn't have a soul, thing doesn't even need any human beings involved anymore. So women and men alike can just be erased from society. And I think we spend a lot of time honing in on the erasure of women and the attack on women and the diminishment of who women were designed to be by the creator of the universe, and how beautiful and special and what should be adored our role in society is in the science world, because my background is in science. Before I ever started working as a content creator, I got my degrees in biomedical sciences, first in undergrad from Colorado State, and then biomedical sciences policy at Georgetown for my graduate degree. But I don't think we spend a lot of time talking about the erasure of women in other areas of culture. And so today, I'm really excited to expand our conversation on how women are being objectively attacked in society. We are being erased even in areas where we are supposed to be legally protected. We are being laughed at when it comes to people in positions of power when we speak up and say that we are being discriminated against, we are being abused, we are being harassed by biological men who are claiming to be women but aren't. And we're slowly starting to see the upside down continue coming to fruition as normal society in the United States of America, especially within the realm of women's sports. You might not think that this impacts you and your backyard community, but the truth is this is happening everywhere. There is an unprecedented crisis all over the world at the child recreational level, all the way up into the Olympics and the most professional levels of sports that you possibly can think of biological men competing against women for a whole multitude of reasons. And even if it might be what we could objectively try to come to an agreement on, a good reason to unfairly silence, squash, and replace women at our own game, our own sport, right before our very eyes. This is happening in all 50 states. It's happening in pretty much every major country around the world. And as we get closer to 2024, we aren't just talking about approaching a really important presidential election. We are also talking about approaching one of the most important sporting events in the entire world that happens every few years. You guys can probably guess what that is. The Olympics happening in Paris in 2024. So the sports community and the athletics community has this question before themselves that's really never had to be asked before, and requires nuanced leadership and courageous adherence to truth in order to protect women and women's sports now more than ever before. And you're starting to see some organizations make those differentiations and distinctions and start to set policy about this. We're going to talk about that and my opinion on everything that's going on in women's sports after we sit down and talk with Riley. So we'll come back to that here in just a second. But I do just think that this is one of those, this is the hill we have to die on moments, because when we're talking about men taking over women's sports, we aren't just talking about trophies being given away. We aren't just talking about Olympic medals being given out to men instead of women. We're actually talking about the safety and lives of women in many sports every single day. We're talking about the career opportunities and endorsement opportunities that are being taken away from women. And we're talking about objective truth as we know it slowly being leaked away from our society through the back door while nobody is paying attention. There is perhaps nobody that has been a more adherent, outspoken advocate for women's sports than our special guest on the stream today, and that is Riley Gaines. If you know anything about Riley, Riley was an NCAA swimmer at the University of Kentucky, a champion swimmer, All-American swimmer, unbelievable athlete, and she is such an incredible human being because beyond winning trophies and having all of her sports accolades and being able to compete at the professional level, which she worked so unbelievably hard to do throughout her entire life, she has now, after graduation, because of her experience swimming against a trans swimmer that you're all probably quite familiar with, Lia Thomas in NCAA swimming, has used her opportunities and platform to speak out to protect women in sports and to share her harrowing experience of what it was like to not just compete against a male, but have to change in the locker room with a male, to have to give up her trophies to a male, to have to explain to the organizers of NCAA swimming meets that women felt unsafe and uncomfortable in their most vulnerable positions behind the scenes and to be laughed at in their face. She has since established something called the Riley Gaines Center at the Leadership Institute and has used her platform not just to advocate through social media and in traditional media, but to lobby for legislation all across the country in protecting women's sports from this insane takeover from biological men at every single level. I'm super excited. This has been behind the scenes work for many, many months to try to get Riley on the stream because she is so unbelievably busy. And I'm sure you guys can imagine because she is so unbelievably busy, she had like a 30-minute window earlier today that she had time to talk. So we recorded this just a few hours ago. I'm going to go ahead and play it for you. And I hope that you learned something exciting and new from Riley. I hope you get to know her a little bit better. And after we're done with our conversation, I'll hop back on live and we'll talk about the Olympics, what different sports are doing to have governance to protect biological women in our own sports, and where I think there is massive, unprecedented legal confusion in the future of women's rights in the United States and Western civilization as we know it. But in the meantime, please join me in welcoming the beautiful, the smart, the unbelievably talented, and well-decorated, for a good reason, Riley Gaines. Riley, I am so excited to have you on the stream. We've been planning this back and forth for a really long time, and I have just been such a huge admirer of the work that you are doing. I'm sure almost every single person watching right now is pretty familiar with you, but for those who aren't, can you give us a brief introduction into who Riley is?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me on. This is super exciting because it's not overly common in this sphere. You get to talk to like a young, beautiful girl. It's typically like old men, so this is fun. Yes, a little bit about me. So I grew up in Nashville, Tennessee. Started swimming when I was 4 years old. Of course, I swam all the way through college, and I graduated at 22. So this means I spent 18 years of my life really dedicated to my sport. You have your sport-specific training, but you also have your weightlifting, you have your diet, your sleep schedule, your physical rehabilitation, not to mention the sacrifices. The social sacrifices, the personal sacrifices you have to make to be willing to compete and really be successful at the highest level. But I was willing to do whatever it took. And fortunately I got there. I had accomplished really great things in my career. I was a 12-time NCAA All-American, a 5-time SEC champion, SEC record holder in the 200 butterfly, Olympic trials, all of those different things. But really how I got the platform that I have now was because our NCAA championships my senior year, which, keep in mind, the NCAA championships, it's the fastest meet in the world. It's what you train all year for. And so I competed at University of Kentucky. About midway through my senior season, I had made my goal to win a national title, which is, of course, would mean becoming the fastest female in the country in my respective event. And I really made this goal after my junior year, I ended up placing 7th in the country. So I knew I was capable of more. And so that was my goal my senior year. And about midway through my senior year, I was really right on pace to achieve that goal. I was ranked 3rd in the country behind one amazing female swimmer who I knew very well, because like in most sports, your top tier athletes, of each other. And so the girl who was in 2nd, who I was trailing by maybe a few 100ths or tenths of a second, I knew very well. But this person who was leading the country by body lengths, I'd never heard of before, which, as I mentioned, that's rare. There's a lot of red flags. This was a senior from University of Pennsylvania, again, who was trailing the country by body lengths in freestyle events ranging from the 100, which is, of course, a sprint, and all the mile, which is long distance. And so for those who don't necessarily understand swimming, think about this in terms of your Olympic runners. This is like saying your best 200-meter runner is your best marathon runner. That doesn't happen. They're totally different systems. But that's what we were seeing in this person. And this is really, of course, the first time I became aware of a swimmer named Lia Thomas. So as I said, I'm talking to my coaches, my family, my teammates. Who is this person? We had no idea until an article came out disclosing that Lia Thomas was formerly Will Thomas and swam 3 years on the men's team at University of Pennsylvania before deciding to switch to the women's team. And so, of course, when I read this, of course, I was shocked. I never thought this is something that would happen in my sport, especially at the level we were competing. But really, I felt this sense of relief. It's as if it all kind of made sense. But I say I felt relief because I then went to look up who Will Thomas was, because I was curious. Admittedly, I was kind of intrigued. Is this someone who went from ranking 1st to now continuing to rank 1st among the women? Which is, of course, not what we saw. We saw this was a mediocre man at best, ranking 462nd in the nation the year prior when competing against the men. But as I said, that's really what gave me this sense of relief, because I thought the NCAA would see it how I saw it. Yeah. And how my teammates saw it, and how my coaches saw it, and my family and my competitors, and how anyone with any amount of brain activity would probably comprehend this. But the NCAA did not see it that way. They saw nothing wrong with it. And they came out and said that Thomas's participation with the women was a non-negotiable. That's the words they used. And so I watched on the side of the pool that national championships, which was in March of 2022, so like a year and a half ago. I watched on the side of the pool as Thomas swam to a national title, again, beating Olympians, beating American record holders, beating impressive female swimmers this world has ever seen by body lengths. So that was the first day, and that was the 500 freestyle. But the second day was the 200 freestyle, which was the event that Thomas and I raced in. And we raced, and almost impossibly enough, we tied, meaning we went the exact same time down to the second, which is pretty rare when you're racing for water. And we go behind the awards podium where the NCAA official looks at both Thomas and myself and says, "Great job, you two, but you tied." And we only have one trophy, so we're going to give it to Lia. Nice job, Riley. And I was just kind of like, there was a lot of feelings, right? My heart rate was still high. My adrenaline was high. But I think the best way to describe how I felt was betrayed. Yeah. And so I asked the question that no one dared ask all season. And I said, why? Why are you giving the trophy to a man in the women's 200 freestyle? I know we tied. I know we don't necessarily account for ties, but what's the rationale here? And I actually appreciate his honesty, because he looked at me and said, well, and his face visibly saddened, right? I could tell he didn't even believe what he was saying. And he looked at me and his eyes sunk in and he said, well, Riley, we've been advised when pictures are being taken, Lia has to have the trophy. Again, you can pose with this one, but you have to give yours back. Lia takes the trophy home, end of story. And so that's really what thrusted me over the edge, because of course all season we knew what was happening was wrong. The unfair competition, the locker room, the silencing, we knew all of that was wrong. But it wasn't really until they reduced everything we've worked our entire lives for down to a photo op. Validate the feelings and the identity of a male, that I really felt called to say something, because up until this point I waited for someone else to do it. Yep. Because I thought surely someone else would. I thought, a coach would say something. I thought an official would say something. I thought someone's dad would come down there and yank this man out of our locker room. I thought someone with political power would do something. I thought some other swimmer. I thought someone who was supposed to be protecting us would protect us. But I remember I had this realization that how could we as women, I mean, we're standing on this podium applauding. We're smiling at our own demolition, our own destruction, and we're expecting someone else to jump in and save us. We can't expect someone to save us if we're not willing to even save ourselves. And
that is so absolutely correct. I have literally 4 million questions I could ask you as a result of that. But I remember a picture from that moment when the trophies were being given out that went pretty viral on social media around that time. And correct me if I'm wrong, but they made you stand off of the first place block to make sure that the photo op was correct, even though it was a tie, correct?
Well, the thing is, shared the podium, but he's so much taller than me because he's a whopping 6'4", and I'm a mere 5'5", 5'6". So it looks as if I'm on a different podium, but there is a photo of this in the 500 freestyle where Thomas is standing on the first place, right? And the second, third, and fourth, so really the first, second, and third place females are standing off to the side because they all went to the Olympics together. Like they were all friends before this, and all of a sudden this man pops up and just demolishes them by body lengths. It's crazy. Yeah.
It's almost laughable, and I think a lot of people have treated it as a joke because there's only a few ways you can really handle the absurdity of this. But where it stops being funny in any aspect, even as a satire comedy sketch, in my opinion, is what was happening to you guys in the locker room. A few women from NCAA Swimming have now very courageously come forward, you and one or two others. But can you just paint a picture for us about what horrifying reality looked like in the locker room for you?
Absolutely. First of all, I think the term paint a picture is just perfect because if I had to see it, I think it's only fair that everyone else has to hear about it. First of all, we weren't forewarned we would be sharing a locker room, right?
No one told you?
Oh gosh, no. We were not made aware of this arrangement that we would be undressing next to a man until we were undressing next to a man. And again, keep in mind, a 6'4", 22-year-old man who's fully intact with an exposing male genitalia, inches away from where you're simultaneously undressing. And I'll kind of set the scene. A swimming locker room is not a place of modesty. I mean, these suits that you're putting on, they're teeny tiny. It takes about 15 minutes to really poke and prod yourself into these suits. Of course, 15 minutes of which you're fully exposed. But it's also this place of like buzzing and chatter and laughter. And you get to see your friends from all over the country who you don't get to see all year until this one meet. So lots of talking. It's pretty loud in that environment. And so I remember I had my back turned. I was changing out of my swimsuit into my clothes, which that's another thing about swimming, especially there's so much undressing going on. You have to undress from your clothes to your suit, and then from your suit into your racing suit, and then from your racing suit back into your practice suit, and then practice suit to your clothes. So that's at least 5 times per session, and we're there multiple times a day. So just for perspective, Thomas's teammates had to undress in front of him 18 times per week. But anyways, had my back turned. I was getting out of my swimsuit into my clothes, and all of a sudden the locker room goes dead silent. And I remember thinking, oh, that's weird. And I turn around and I like look up because again, this person is so tall, towering over everyone else. And there's a man who's taking off his women's swimsuit and putting on his clothes. And there was so many feelings. Of course, it's awkward, it's embarrassing, it's uncomfortable, it's belittling. But I think the best word to describe the locker room without being overdramatic is traumatic. I mean, it was traumatizing. And not even necessarily for me, just traumatizing because of what we were exposed to. It was traumatizing for me to know just how easy it was for the men, the authority figures, the officials, the people within the NCAA to totally dismiss our rights to privacy with not even a second thought. And so I immediately left the locker room when I saw this happen. And I went up to one of the officials on the pool deck and I said, look, I know the guidelines for the meet, which was a mere 12 months of HRT, which is hormone replacement therapy. But I said, what are the guidelines that allowed a man into our locker room? And I'll never forget the official so nonchalantly He just says, oh, well, don't worry. We actually got around this by making the locker rooms unisex. And so
So
the first thing that
theoretically,
came to
even
my
someone
mind,
identifying as a male could have changed with you.
yeah, yes, anyone, any coach, any official, any parent, any pervert who wanted to be in there had full access to. But the first thing that came to my mind, um, it was kind of this realization of, okay, you just admitted this is wrong because you admitted you changed the rules to allow this person into our locker room. So you're acknowledging this isn't a woman, or else you wouldn't have to change the rules. The NCAA also, which I don't think the public really knows this, every event, so top 16 are awarded All-American status. If you finish top 16 in the country, you're an All-American. Every event where Thomas competed and displaced someone out of the top 16, the NCAA awarded the 17th place finisher an All-American status.
Really?
It's them acknowledging what they're doing was wrong. I mean, they're saying it.
So why do you think they keep up the facade then? If they had to change the rules for who is allowed to go naked into a locker room, and if they're changing their own rules for who gets to be an All-American, why keep up the facade?
Personally, what I think really the driving factor behind this, and it really transcends beyond just sports, of course, I think in corporate America, I think even in churches, I think in academia, is these people are following the money. They're terrified of lawsuits, which I wholeheartedly believe the NCAA was, and they're terrified of losing federal public funding. If they lose, their federal funding, then that means they're out a lot of money. And so we're seeing so many people, and again, organizations and different things, throw away their moral compass entirely to adhere. We saw the same thing recently with the National Federation of Republican Women, right? The one place where you would think they would stand firm in not allowing men. The National Federation of Republican Women is now allowing men who identify as women to join. And it's coming from, I believe, the president in New Jersey, and they've said it's because of lawsuits. They don't want to have to deal with it. And so it's bullying tactics, I think. I don't know if it's a lot of internal pressure. I mean, even the president of the NCAA himself, Mark Emmert, who's now stepped down publicly in the days following the Lia Thomas debacle, he released a statement saying he unequivocally stood in his decision to allow Lia Thomas to swim with the women because it was based in evolving science. And I remember that because I just think it's so comical. But privately, at a big conference where they were announcing NCAA Woman of the Year, to which I was nominated for, but so was Lia Thomas, privately, Mark Emmert, again, the president who released that statement publicly, comes up to me and says, keep fighting, keep going. These people are cowards. They're spineless. And again, they're willing to let us, as women, as female athletes, become collateral damage in this process.
In other sports, certainly in swimming as well, but I think in other sports that are a bit more tactical and hands-on, sometimes paying the price literally means like paying the price for your safety or maybe even your life. And we're starting to see this conversation become a lot more national and international regarding biological men playing in and competing in women's sports. After you graduated and after you did a phenomenal job as a swimmer for the NCAA, you have decided to make your voice very much heard in the world of athletics, period, not just as it comes to swimming. What are you seeing when it comes to skateboarding or surfing or combat sports like MMA, wrestling, with this exact same conversation?
It is everywhere. Truly, it's in every state, it's in every division, it's in every sport. And to believe the lie that's being pushed that it's a non-issue or it's not really happening, or this is Nebraska, we only have 4 trans athletes in the state, that could not be further from the truth. And I know this because I get the messages. I get the messages from young girls who don't know what to do, who are dealing with this as young as middle school, elementary school even sometimes, and they don't know how to handle it. And I get the calls from parents who watch in the stands as their daughters are being demolished and exploited in locker rooms. And I get the calls from coaches who don't know what to do. So it's quite literally happening everywhere. And I think more and more stories are breaking. recently, and typically how we're seeing this go is it's happening, and I'll be the first to admit women's sports, of course, don't get as much coverage as men's sports.
Mm-hmm.
But even in the sports, the smaller of the women's sports, most recently, we've seen this in fencing, where there's a huge biological advantage to having longer arms, to being
Massive.
taller. Yes, and it's happening there. It's happened rampantly in cycling. So I think a lot of these smaller sports is where it's starting. It's not getting as much attention because who watches disc golf? I'll be the first to say I don't. I know really nothing about disc golf, but I know there's a man by the name of Natalie Ryan who's taken over $35,000 in prize money alone this year, or $47,000, I think it was. But yes, and in regards to safety, as you mentioned, in sports where there's physical contact, where you're running into one another, colliding, throwing something at one another, whatever that looks like, you do have to worry about your safety. Peyton McNabb, the volleyball player from North Carolina, there's a video, and it's a pretty terrible video. There's a man on the opposing side who jumps up, spikes the ball, hits her in the face. That happened over a year ago, last September. And still to this day, she's partially paralyzed on her right side.
Oh my
Her vision
gosh.
and memory are impaired. She has to have special accommodations for testing at school. And now she's not playing college sports like she thought she was going to because she can't. So the safety threat is very real. And that being said, very briefly, I want to add, this is stemming from the tippy top. The Biden administration, don't even get me started on the press secretary, who the other day was a reporter asked a very, of course, legitimate question with a legitimate concern, saying, what about the safety of our female athletes in sports that require physical contact? And she responded back with, well, that statement is alluding to the fact that you think trans people are dangerous. Therefore, that statement is transphobic, and I won't be responding.
You just can't make this stuff up. But the Biden administration is one of many voices, obviously from the tip top, really pushing this younger and younger and younger. And they refuse to say any appropriate age for when hormone replacement therapy or surgical intervention should start for people who are identifying as the opposite gender or neither gender. In California, you're starting to see laws be passed by people like people spearheading the law, like Gavin Newsom, who is expected to sign a bill that was just passed last week, taking custody away from you of your child if you don't agree with their new gender identity. Canada already has that as a national law. I think you're absolutely right. This is coming from the top down, which is partially why people are afraid of it. But that doesn't mean that there's not an opportunity to inspire and educate people to speak up about the truth anyway, which is exactly what you've been doing and getting all of the right laws passed in the meantime while everybody's trying to do the wrong thing behind the scenes. Walk us through what that has looked like in terms of some of your lobbying and legislative advocacy since graduating from college.
So I want to mention that I graduated college with my degree in human health sciences and health law, and I had every intention of going to dental school. I had put my deposit down already. I had accepted my seat into dental school. That's what I thought I was going to be doing. But then, of course, this happened, and I really saw what was at stake, and so I took a total leap of faith and realized I wanted to make impact here. Dental school will always be there, but the importance and the relevance behind this issue might not always be. And so that's kind of what that looked like. But since then, I have traveled state to state, testifying on behalf of these bills, these fairness in women's sports bills being put forward. And now I can happily say that 23 states thus far have passed some sort of fairness in women's sports legislation. Of course, meaning that you compete with your sex, not in the category that matches your gender identity or how you perceive yourself. You compete with your sex. Which, of course, that means the majority of states still haven't. There are still 27 states that have not passed this bill, but 23 have, which is huge considering just 3 years ago in 2020, only one state had, which was Idaho. And so leaps and bounds in the past 3 years. Also at the state level, working on a bill called the Women's Bill of Rights. I've worked alongside Independent Women's Voice to develop this bill, and crazily enough, it is a law that defines the word woman.
Shocking. Yeah.
Never thought we would have needed that. But first got this passed in Kansas, then my home state of Tennessee, then Governor Stitt in Oklahoma signed an executive order and most recently in Nebraska, which what I think is really cool about this is Governor Pillen in Nebraska, he signed an executive order on the Women's Bill of Rights on the same day that the world record for attendance at a women's sporting event was broken in Nebraska, where they had 92,003 people all there to watch Nebraska volleyball. And so I just thought that was incredible because he, in a world where we have people sending the message that we don't matter, Governor Pillen very clearly told us that we do matter. And so I thought that was really awesome. At the federal level, we have, as we have said, we have a beautiful 37-word federal civil rights law called Title IX. It is supposed to prevent discrimination on the basis of sex, but we have an administration in the White House who is actively rewriting Title IX to where it would now be preventing discrimination on the basis of gender identity. And so what this means in a nutshell, men would have full access to bathrooms, locker rooms, changing spaces. Men can live in dorm rooms with women. Men could, of course, take academic and athletic scholarships away from women. Men can join sororities, which we are seeing. We've seen this at University of Wyoming, and these girls, oh my gosh, I believe there were 12 who signed on to the lawsuit, 6 as plaintiffs and 6 as witnesses. This judge, first of all, he's like 90 years old anyway.
Yeah.
What is he still doing being a judge? But he is. From the beginning, he's caused them problems. These girls, I think pretty naturally wanted to remain anonymous in the lawsuit. He told them no. He wouldn't hear it if they weren't willing to put their names to it, and then further threatened them by saying, if you put your name to this, it will follow you the rest of your life, and you don't want that. But these girls went through with it, which I couldn't be more proud of them for. But recently, the judge just ruled that under the CAPA bylaws, it doesn't define the word woman. So they're re-strategizing, they're kind of re-amping their lawsuit and going to introduce it again, which I think is really great. These girls are so incredible, and I don't know how much of what I can reveal that they have told me because of the litigation, but the stuff that this man living in their sorority house has said to them, has done to them, causing one of the girls to feel so unsafe on that college campus that she's had to transfer schools. Wow. He rear-ended her with his car. All of these different things is chilling, to say the least. But that's only going to continue to happen because we have organizations and administrations like the Biden administration leaving this totally open.
This story is one that we followed quite a bit in terms of the Wyoming lawsuit on the stream. I think we've talked about it like 3 or 4 times in the last few months because it's just been crazy as it keeps resurrecting into new chapters. And as you mentioned, the case has been dismissed now, although without prejudice, so they can theoretically bring it back. And what I thought was crazy is that in the lawsuit, it's acknowledged, and in all of these articles, it's acknowledged that all of these girls have seen a man asking them about sexual behavior, asking them after they get out of the shower while they're standing there in a towel, what they're doing later that day, fully erect in their sorority house. And the national organization of this sorority, which they don't define what woman is in their bylaws, but they do say is a single gender organization. So it's a little easy, in my opinion, to come to the legal consensus of what that definition is supposed to be. They continue saying, we are going to stand for the right of this man to be in our sorority, and we don't give a crap about what these girls are having to deal with in their own house, which very much mirrors the stories that I hear from people like you in the locker room and what you're experiencing when everybody says, we don't care, we're going to stand for that person's right instead of your right to not be sexually assaulted or sexually harassed or abused in your own home. To the point that this district judge even said, it's not the job of this court to define what a woman is today. I think, and like you, I had the opportunity to go to professional school. I put my deposit down at law school and said the same thing. I have way too much to do right now. Law school will always be there. But from a legal perspective, I just think it is so damning for our own judicial system to be so weaponized to the point that we can't define what a woman is, that we are putting Title IX at legal risk if we can't protect women because we can't define what a woman is. We are putting the 19th Amendment at risk because we can't protect women if we don't know what a woman is. How do you see this cascading and downfalling from this Wyoming case to the larger implication of women's rights legally in America?
I have to believe in my heart that this issue really has no sustainability. I mean, it simply cannot. Because if you think about what's next, I don't understand what could possibly be next. The pendulum has swung so far. Again, if you would have asked me 3 years ago, I wouldn't have imagined here. So it does kind of make your brain wonder. But what they're asking us to do, they want to control how we think, they want to control how we feel, they want to control what we say. It's really Orwellian. It's like this idea of news speak or whatever it is in 1984, where they're trying to make us say 2 + 2 is 5. And we're adhering, we're doing that. Even though we know it's not, we know 2 + 2 is 4. They're asking us to deny the most basic of truths, which is the sheer essence of humanity. Hate to break it to everyone listening. We are all here for man and woman, yet they're asking us to deny that, which is a pretty chilling thought. But as I said, I do believe people daily are becoming more bold. They're becoming more empowered. Unfortunately, it happens because there are more and more stories of girls being exploited in locker rooms or injured or losing out on opportunities or whatever that looks like. But I think we're waking up the mad mama bears. And that's I think scarier than a lot of things. So
it sure is. Moms are intense.
Yes, so I have to believe in my heart that this issue has a shelf life. Maybe that's a naive thought. I've been known to be naive surrounding these things before because I just can't see how it can continue to get worse. But I think there's a lot of weight on the next presidential election. I think if we have the same administration in the White House for another 4 years, that'll be pretty detrimental. But I'm, as I said, I think people are waking up.
In our last few minutes, Riley, because I know you're super busy out there fighting for women in every way that you can, what can people do to make themselves more educated about this topic, to go find stories like yours, and then just from a practical perspective to help support women, not just in sports, but in everything that we talked about today?
Absolutely. First and foremost, I do think it's important to know where your state stands on these issues that affect a lot of the gender ideology stuff, and of course, parental rights. I think that's really important. Knowing where your state stands, you probably could have a pretty good guess depending on if your state is red or blue. But know that and reach out to your state senator or your representative. I think as a constituent, it's their job to represent you and the people. Granted, they don't always do that, but it's important to advocate for that. Secondly, my message to parents is be willing to defend your daughters. Too much of this battle has fallen entirely on the shoulders of young girls and women. Like myself, younger girls than of course me, who are faced with this, being told to boycott and all these different things. They need their parents. They need their authority figures to stand up for them. That being said, this issue, I think it's centered around girls and women, and we often ask ourselves the question of, where are the feminists, which is a very valid question, because where are the feminists? But I think we should be asking ourselves the question of, where are the men? And so any men listening, we need strong men. We need men to fulfill their biblical role, which is to protect and provide. And there's this saying, and it's hard times create strong men create good times create weak men create hard times. And it's really interesting because, of course, you can see it repeat itself throughout history, and there's no doubt in my mind we're in the part of the process now where weak men have created hard times, which we can only hope these hard times garner strong men again. So I guess my message to parents is defend your daughters and teach your sons masculinity. Teach them to be
beautiful.
Strong men.
How about you, Riley? What's next for Riley Gaines in your next chapter of advocacy?
So I just recently launched the Riley Gaines Center, which is a training program, because what really inclined me to do this is the amount of private messages I was getting, thanking me, telling me to keep going, whispers and when I would see people in public. And at first I thought this was great, but then as I continued to really take the arrows, I'm like, okay, why aren't more people confident enough to say this outright? It's not hard. It's not hard to say what I'm saying. And so I created a training program to inspire and develop and really equip leaders with the right resources and effective communication tools and different things to, I guess, lead, to feel confident enough to know that we are in the majority, and to know it's liberating to speak the truth. And so we've had a couple training sessions, which is really fun. And also through the center, we're going to fund to put conservative speakers back on college campuses, which, coming from a college campus, I know how freedom of speech is under threat. So this is really, really exciting stuff. And so the center, it's the Riley Gaines Center. You can find it at the RileyGainesCenter.org. There's ways to get involved outside of even, of course, just financial means. There's newsletters and different things to help people stay up to date and educated on the different things going on around the country, but even globally.
Awesome. Amazing. I have so many other things that I'm dying to ask you about, but I know you have a very busy schedule, so we'll have to have you back on the stream very, very, very soon. Where is the easiest way people can find you and help support your mission?
Absolutely. As I mentioned, you can go to the RileyGainesCenter.org. Also, I do, as I mentioned, a lot of work with the Independent Women's Forum, and their website is iwf.org. My Twitter is Riley_Gaines_. I try and do a good job posting there of different stories, blah, blah, blah. So that's where you can find me. Instagram is Riley G. Barker. I got married throughout all this craziness, and so my last name is Barker, but of course I go by Riley Gaines, so.
Awesome. Congratulations to you, Riley, on everything that you've been doing. And thank you from the bottom of all of our hearts for just continuing to courageously speak the truth and stand up for women everywhere. We're so grateful for you.
Absolutely. And thank you for doing what you do.
I adore that young woman so much. I saw so many comments in our live chat of you guys saying, thank you so much, Riley. Riley, you're amazing. Riley never stop based. I love this interview. I'm so glad that you guys loved it so much. We've been working around both of our like crazy, ridiculously busy schedules for weeks to finally do this interview. And we knew that you guys were going to absolutely love it and adore it. My dad popped in just a second ago in the live chat on YouTube. Geez, how hard is this, people? Women equals XX, men equals XY. Not an argument, just facts and science. It's crazy to me that Riley gets the backlash that she does just saying that. Like, that's her entire life. Her entire job is to just say that. And the amount of hatred and backlash and unbelievable adversity that she has to go through every single day just blows my mind. But I wanted to make sure that you guys knew where to support her and find out what she's doing, because she is not slowing down anytime soon. As Riley mentioned, she just recently launched the Riley Gaines Center with the Leadership Institute, which does fantastic, amazing training for high school and college students all over the country. And she mentioned that she is training student athletes right now for how to speak up and advocate for women in sports. You can just go to RileyGainesCenter.org to check this out. But this is a great place if you have the financial capacity to donate, to make sure that different students have the opportunities to go to speaking events or trainings, or even host events with speakers like Riley on college campuses. Riley, if you remember a few months ago, the night after I was attacked by Antifa at Virginia Commonwealth University. When was that? You guys remember months better than me. Probably like April. I was at VCU with Kristen Hawkins and Students for Life, and we were attacked by Antifa. And it was either the night before or the night after. Riley had been asked to go speak to the Turning Point USA chapter at San Francisco State University, and she was actually held hostage inside of a classroom by a lot of these trans activists, many of whom weren't even students at SFSU, but that's where she was speaking that night. They held her down. A man in a dress held her down and repeatedly punched her because she was speaking up for women and women's sports and the protection of women, and she was held in that classroom for like 3-4 hours. Students were demanding that their university pay them money, pay them reparations for her to be let out of the room. Unfortunately, we didn't have time to talk about that during our conversation today because Riley was pretty busy, but I would love to have her back to talk about that the next time that she has a speaking event, because it was just crazy reading her experience and her testimony and the extreme adversity like I've never seen for a up-and-coming college campus speaker and content creator and just advocate for objective truth She is an unbelievable rock star, and I'm very, very inspired to see the work that she is doing. I let you know before we started talking to Riley that towards the latter half of the stream here, what I really wanted to share with you is my opinion and my take on where this is all going into the future. This concept, although it probably seems really new, it kind of feels like it's all come to a head because of Lia Thomas, Will Thomas, in 2022 with that women's swimming championship that Riley was just sharing she competed in. But really, this has been going on since like 2018 in the United States, and it's a question that keeps picking up more momentum. We've talked a lot lately about the snowball rolling down the hill effect, that it gets bigger and bigger and bigger until you're kind of forced to deal with it or it goes out of control. But the New York Post put together in May a compilation of other examples of where this is happening in American sports and why this is becoming such a important issue when it comes to our culture and our news. What I think this really started at was in Connecticut in 2018. There was a biological male who won and the runner-up at the high school track meet for the state. And then later in the NCAA 400-meter hurdle championship, one of these people, a transgender woman who had previously competed at Franklin Pierce University's men's track team, decided to compete as a woman, going from Craig to Cece, very similar pathway that Will Thomas took, and ended up crushing 7 other born and raised female finalists. This is a picture of when that happened in 2019. Obviously, we all know the story of what happened when Will Thomas, who was ranked like 462nd in men's swimming, decided to swim as a woman and go by Lia Thomas, won the 2022 Division I 500-yard freestyle. Put them all together, and common sense would put a quick end to this, certainly before it could grow worse, not as a matter of politics, religion, or ideology. The New York Post reminds us that Caitlyn Jenner has actually come out and said, as an athlete themselves, that this does not make any sense. This is not okay. This doesn't follow scientific objective truth. Trans women and biological men should never be competing in sports with biological women. And now we're starting to see this take off in other sports all over the world at every single level of competition. I said at the beginning of this stream, this isn't just happening on the Olympic level. It's certainly not just happening at the NCAA level, but this is happening in virtually every single sport now. Everything from kids' recreational leagues up to the highest levels of competition at the Olympics. The International Consortium on Female Sports is an organization dedicated to advocacy to preserve female sports. And if you ever go to their Twitter account, if you just keep scrolling down here and there, you're going to find just crazy stories from almost every single sport, which blows my mind. As Riley mentioned, this is happening in droves in the fencing world, which I had absolutely no idea was such an important area of advocacy here. Obviously, powerlifting in particular, has become a huge subject of this conversation. The number one women's non-drug tested squat ever was 615 pounds. The number one men's stringently drug tested squat is over 1,000 pounds. That's almost a 500-pound difference. And there has been a biological male competing as a woman, I believe this is in Canada. I could be wrong. Canadians, let me know. Named Audrey Yoon, who is taking home money and endorsements and brand deals and sponsorships as a women's powerlifter, even though they are a biological male. Again, just keep scrolling through here. This is USA Fencing. Again, there's some more fencing stories right there. Apparently, they have taken over female events. Cycling, as Riley also mentioned, is a huge sport where this is being dealt with. Here's that biological male powerlifting competitor. I see stories happening in track and field left and right, and that's probably one of the other, besides swimming, most prominent sports where this has become a huge international conversation. Surfing has really had to deal with this issue lately, and we're going to talk about that here in just a second. But this is happening, as I said, literally everywhere. If you think that your child's sport, if you think that your sport, if you think that your backyard is immune to this, it is not. And how your state, how your recreational leagues, how your competitive sports, how your college, and how your country deals with this issue really does boil down to the protection of women and women's rights to have the opportunity to safely and fairly compete in all of the experiences that they can have in the athletics world. This all really came to a head in April and March, the springtime, when the track and field governing organization called World Athletics decided to ban transgender athletes from track and field competitions. There are a few exceptions, and it has to do with hormone levels, I think. But generally speaking, international competition in track and field now will ban transgender athletes. And this was a huge breaking story back in March and April, because this obviously applies going into the Olympics. If you don't know much about the Olympics, the International Olympic Committee really lets every sport's own governing body decide what the rules are for each individual sport. And that's true of eligibility for all kinds of stuff, not just what your biological gender is or your gender identity, but really all kinds of different subjects. So USA Gymnastics, for example, and the gymnastics governing body would make the decision for the gymnastics world. The surfing new competition in the Olympics now, which is super cool that that's an Olympic sport, makes their own jurisdiction over how things happen. World Athletics governs track and field events, and they have decided to ban transgender athletes from international competition, but it really just depends on each individual governing body. When all of this was breaking news back in the spring, the IOC, International Olympic Committee, did exactly what the NCAA was doing to Riley, saying, we don't really want to deal with this. We don't want to have the backlash fall on us. And as I mentioned, rather than basing everything off of hormone levels, the Olympic chiefs going into 2024 in Paris have decided that they will leave the final decision to the governing body of each sport, encouraging category qualifiers. Obviously, that has come to fruition to look like a million different things. And while some organizations like World Athletics are making all of the right decisions in protecting women's rights in sports to compete safely and compete fairly, other organizations are making all of the wrong decisions, including the governing body over the world of surfing. Several months ago, surfing legend and professional surfer Bethany Hamilton, who you guys might recognize from her movie Soul Surfer, about her life when her arm was tragically amputated in a surfing accident in Hawaii, where she was from. She decided to speak up about this now as a mom and as a professional surfer and professional athlete just a few months ago, and it made many, many waves on social media. Check this out.
Today, I want to address the news that the World Surf League has officially made the rule that male-bodied individuals known as transgender athletes can officially compete in the women's division. The World Surf League says they are following the Olympic guidelines. While I address this issue, I want to be clear that I strive to have love for all of mankind, regardless of any differences.
Which I think is great. That's a great stance to take. I love that.
But this concerns me as a professional athlete that has been competing in the World Surf League events for the past 15 plus years. And I feel that I must speak up and stand up for those in position that may feel that they cannot say something about this. I think many of the girls currently on tour are not in support with this new rule, and they fear being ostracized if they speak up.
There's that fear factor again that Riley was just mentioning. Nobody wanted to mention how uncomfortable they were in the locker room to any of the officials, and she kept waiting for somebody to say something about any of it, about having to compete with a man, about being beat by a man, about being sexually harassed by a man in the locker room, and she decided eventually she was going to have to be the one to do it because nobody was speaking up. So kudos to Bethany Hamilton for taking the lead here when other women rightfully are afraid of being ostracized, of losing sponsorships, of losing their opportunity to compete, and how crazy and sad that that's the type of world that we live in.
So here I go. Questions I have that I want to consider with you. How is this rule playing out in other sports like swimming, running, MMA? Have any of the current surfers in the World Surf League been asked what their thoughts and opinions are on this new rule before it was passed or announced?
Of course not. Just like Riley and all of her colleagues and peers in the professional or NCAA swimming level were never asked if they would be comfortable taking their swimsuits off and standing buck naked next to a fully intact biological male with a penis in their locker room, inches from their face.
Should there be a conversation with the 17 women and all of the men on tour prior to a rule change such as this? Is a hormone level an honest and accurate depiction that someone indeed is a male or female? Is it as simple as this? Who is pushing for this huge change?
That's $1 million question that they really don't want you to be asking.
Does this better the sport of surfing? Is this better for the women in surfing? If so, how? How did whoever decided these hormone rules come to the conclusion that 12 months of testing testosterone make it a fair and legal switch?
Yep. That's all they required, by the way, was 12 months. 12 months long of you being on testosterone or off of testosterone in order to qualify for the other category of sports. A year. Because that's totally fair to women who have been women for 30 years.
The WSL's statement about trans women competing with women, and yet there's no mention of converted women competing with men. I personally think that the best solution would be to create a different division so that all can have a fair opportunity to showcase their passion and talent. And I think it's really hard to imagine what the future of women's surfing will be like in 15 to 20 years down the road if we move forward allowing this major change.
Obviously makes a huge difference. If you think about surfing, if any of you ever have surfed, similar to swimming, the capacity of you to have larger muscle mass, to have broader shoulders, to have typically much more of a capacity with longer arms to swim a lot faster, you're going to be able to catch waves a lot faster. You're going to be able to ride bigger waves than women probably can. And of course, you have an unfair advantage against biological women in the competition space.
But we are seeing glimpses of male-bodied dominance in women's sports like running, swimming, and others. My hope is that if I ever have a daughter who is competing in surfing or any sport, and also for all the aspiring young generation of women, to have a bright and promising opportunity in her ambition to be the best of the best woman in her sport. I personally won't be competing in or supporting the World Surf League if this rule remains.
Good for you, Bethany Hamilton. And I don't know if you guys ever saw that right when it came out. Alex says, I remember this story. This poor woman got so much hate for saying that, like literally everywhere. And I remember commenting on that video on Instagram saying that I'd admired her for a really long time and just appreciated her for speaking up on this issue because I know it's hard. And I got like 45 responses to my comment on her Instagram about how I'm this evil TERF, which if you're not familiar with the term, means trans exclusionary radical feminist. The queen of the TERFs is the queen J.K. Rowling herself. So I don't really have a problem being called a TERF if that means I'm speaking up for women and actually embracing what feminism was supposed to be before it got completely hijacked by the radical left and decimated of all meaning or substance whatsoever. But as we close out today, I want to leave you with this. Even outside of the sports world, right? Obviously, this is a huge concept that needs our attention and needs our courage to speak up in truth if women are to keep competing fairly and safely in their chosen sport, in their passion, in their hobby, and in what they were blessed to do. I think this has ramifications far beyond the world of sports. We talked a couple weeks ago about the Wyoming lawsuit being thrown out for a man joining a Kappa Kappa Gamma chapter at the University of Wyoming and sitting in the sorority house completely erect while girls are getting out of the shower and walking around in their towels in their home. I mean, that's their house. Of course they're going to do that. And how unbelievably disgusting it was to see a U.S. district judge say it is not the job of the judicial system, period, certainly his court, to define what a woman even is. The court was not going to do that today. Someone sitting on the bench of our Supreme Court of the United States says that they lack the capacity to define what a woman is as a woman herself, as a biological and identifying woman herself. Feminists seem to be a whole lot happier applauding the efforts and applauding the accolades of biological men instead of women, not just in sports, but in Women of the Year competitions and getting hired for jobs within the federal government that are quite prestigious, in beauty pageants, which we're now seeing in the Miss Universe organization, in swimsuit modeling opportunities, on Sports Illustrated covers, on billboards for Victoria's Secret, and more. So the more we continue allowing the lie to become the truth, I have extreme concerns that our legal system and the very concept of women's rights are at risk, are falling apart before our very eyes. Because if our Department of Justice cannot answer the question, what is a woman? How on God's green earth are legal experts or our politicians or judges or even the Supreme Court of the United States supposed to protect women's rights? How are we supposed to enforce Title IX to protect women's sports if we can't define what a woman is? How are we supposed to protect women who are victims of domestic violence or are victims of sexual assault or are victims of homicide if we cannot define what a woman is? How are we supposed to enforce and protect the 19th Amendment, the right of women to vote, if you cannot define what a woman is? I am so flabbergasted that we've let this go this far, to the point that U.S. district judges in our federal court system and a member of the Supreme Court of the United States refuse to acknowledge the definition of womanhood, because the ramifications for that are not just silly opportunities for tweets or X posts or whatever we're calling it now. It's not just an opportunity for a viral TikTok moment or an Instagram reel. This has real ramifications for the safety and lives and human rights of women as we know it. And meanwhile, the supposed feminist movement is nowhere to be found. Crickets. Silence. The same people who a few years ago were running around every major city in the United States of America wearing knit pink hats to reflect the anatomy of a vulva now refuse to acknowledge what a woman is, cannot define what a woman is. Silly how that becomes completely obsolete within a matter of months based on what is politically correct and cheered on by the loudest voices in our society. So there's really only one solution. Get louder. Talk about it at every possible opportunity. Not everybody is an NCAA champion or an All-American swimmer like Riley, but everybody has the capacity to do what Riley is doing, to go get laws passed in state legislatures, to lobby on congressional bills and lobby to your individual congressional representatives and senators, to post on social media, to go speak on college campuses, to just talk to your friends and talk to your kids about what's going on in women's sports. Not everybody has to host a live stream or have zillions of followers on social media or write books about this stuff, but everybody can be speaking up about women, defending women, not people who menstruate, not birthing people, not chest feeders, not people with a bonus hole, women. And I loved what Riley said about, obviously, we need more women to speak up about this. And I have loved seeing women from every aspect and every realm of society and culture, in every part of the political spectrum, in every religious tradition, in every ethnicity, etc. I love seeing women all over the world start speaking up about this, even if I wouldn't agree with them on everything, because I don't even think that's the important thing anymore. But beyond women speaking up, Riley makes an excellent point. Not only do women need to be speaking up for women, men need to be speaking up for women. Men need to be calling this out for what this is. Men need to be identifying the truth about fairness, equality, and human rights in society. So men, if you are watching this right now, get louder, speak up, defend women, fight for women. We have slowly destroyed the concept of gender as we know it so systematically in society that I don't even know what the end result of this is going to look like. I used to joke that it would be all of us standing around in brown paper bags or burlap sacks, androgynously shaving our heads and just all embracing they, them pronouns and all having weirdly androgynous names. I used to think that was the ultimate end goal. But the more I see this interact, as I mentioned at the beginning of the stream, with the scientific world and the world of biotechnology and medical development, which is mostly what we talk about with the erasure of women, the more I actually think this is intentionally designed so that we don't have any male or female roles in society, period. We've already stripped away cultural roles of men and women in society in terms of gender roles. But if we can create human-like adjacent beings, embryos, completely from stem cells, who's to say we need men or women to procreate? If we don't need women to create eggs, companies like Conception in San Francisco can just grow eggs in a laboratory from a stem cell. Who's to say we don't need procreation anymore? If we're growing babies in artificial womb facilities and editing their genome in real time, why would we need women? It is so much like The Giver coming to real life every single day. It blows my mind. And I think back to 5th grade when I had to read The Giver as mandatory reading and how controversial that was at the time because parents were upset that their kids had to read a book about communism or something. I actually had several people that I knew in my life, including dear friends of mine, pull their kids from school over having to read The Giver in class because they were upset that their kid was going to have to read about communism as if it was somehow going to like indoctrinate their child to be a communist. In reality, The Giver is exactly the playbook, like 1984, which I had to read as a sophomore in high school, with what's happening right before our very eyes, with the destruction of the family, with editing different people's genes and anybody who's undesirable getting, what do they call it? It's not dismissed from the community. I can't even remember the name. I can't remember. It'll come back to me, I know. Getting dismissed from the community, aka being euthanized, like you just leave. People have their specific job and role in society based on their personality, and that is assigned to you, and that's all you get to do for the rest of your life. You are assigned the children that belong to you, but really they're the community's children. They don't even really belong to you. All of your property is assigned to you. You have to take mandatory medication and injections every single day. Sound familiar? You get pre-made meals delivered to your home through a hole in the wall because you shouldn't be growing your own food or preparing your own food. The entire concept is just bizarre, but it's what is happening every single day we choose to stay silent. It's retirement for the old people, Dutch Canadian, but it's also released. They're released from the community. It came back to me in The Giver when it's a baby that didn't make it to its weigh-in goal or whatever, or a person who made the mistakes of breaking all of the rules. They're released from the community, aka they are just unalived and euthanized, because that's super, super great. We have to keep speaking up about this. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you do for a living. It doesn't matter where you come from. This is an active participation mandate and requirement for every single person if we are serious about saving our society from those downstream ramifications that I think most people aren't even thinking about yet. So the question is, what are you going to do about it? Thank you guys so much for joining us on the stream today. We are going to jump over to Locals for our post-stream Q&A, which, as usual, all of you guys are completely invited to, and we'd love to see every single one of you joining us over there. Locals is also a place where we have special specific content that only exists for all of our community members over there. We're going to start doing IRL meetups for just our Locals community here very soon, so we want to make sure you guys have the chance to join us here in just a second. I'm dropping the link right now in our live chat for you guys to join us. In addition, as we are leaving the stream today, do me a huge, huge, huge favor. First and foremost, go follow Riley wherever you can, because she's doing all of the right things and deserves all of our help in her journey to stand up for women. And don't forget to smash that follow or subscribe button wherever you are watching: Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, Getter, and Locals. We will see you guys in just a minute. Everybody else, we are back for the stream tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern. Have a great Wednesday night.